trying to all the different planes.
So
I was in the Air Force, and it's a anti-Air Force.
Mhm.
It belongs to the aviation. You know.
And what? When were you born in Austria?
And where?
When?
Oh, 1928.
1928. Were you part of any youth organizations growing up?
I need somebody.
You're going to have to sit on this side. He can't hear you. And talk slow.
Yeah. Were you part of any youth organizations growing up in Austria?
Well,
Your school was all boys schools, yeah.
Okay.
And I was recruited to the army. In Hitler's army. And I was 15 years old. And I went into high school. And one day the teacher came in the morning and told us everybody that's born in 1928 and part of it, 29, gotta go in the service. Well, that was it. It was a little, no, in a way, I was glad to be it over with the schooling. My education was a little mixed up too, because my first grade was Czech. Well, I would have to start all over from the beginning. Did you ever hear of the German, Austrian-Hungarian
Austro-Hungarians, yes, I have.
monarchy? So that's where my parents come from. That it was Austrian monarchy.
Was any of your family members in the Austro-Hungarian military?
Slow.
No. Were any of your family in the Austro-Hungarian military before they fell? You know.
Was your dad in the Austrian-Hungarian military?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he was.
Sorry.
He was in the First World War, about 4 years.
No.
Well, and where I was born, that belonged to Austria-Hungary. And after the First World War, it became Czechoslovakia.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
So, and my father was there, but he didn't recognize him as a Czech, you know. So, and the Czechs, they were trying to make Czechs out of the Germans over there, and naturally,
Thank you very much.
that didn't work out very well. But my dad got a job on the railroad, which was I'm getting stuck.
Oh, you're fine.
So good. Take your time. You're good.
It was not public, not. It was
Private.
like here, post office.
Oh, so okay.
As I should know.
Like
What
a
is it
federal?
Huh?
Post office? What?
His dad was in the post railroad.
My dad worked for the railroad, and the railroad was not public.
It was in the government.
Government. It
A
was
government job.
a government job. Well, and in our village, there was a German school and a Czech school. The Czechs, they built up some schools there. And so because he worked for the government, they told him, if you want to keep your job, you send your kids into the Czech school, you know. But I didn't know no Czech, not even my parents talked Czech much, you know. And the independent ones, like the farmers, and that didn't belong, you know, had nothing to do with the government. They naturally sent their kids in German school. So it was.
So your best friends would be in German school, And you would-
And that's right. My friend, almost my second things. And I naturally wanted to go in German school too.
Because all your friends were there.
So I had to start out in kindergarten, in Czech school, and then two and first two, the second grade, it was Czech. And then when Hitler came, he delivered us, he turned everything around again. We were Germans again. Germany and Austria, they made a country,
Anschluss.
they were united. They were just like one.
What was the name of your village?
That was Umlowitz.
Umlowitz?
There was a große Umlowitz, that means big Umlowitz, and klein Umlowitz, that means little Umlowitz. And really, Klein Umlowitz was really bigger than Groß Umlowitz. In Klein Umlowitz there was the church and the two schools and some gasthouses and some taverns, inns. And in Groß Umlowitz there were just farmers and workers, masons and
Which
things. But
Stupid because Gross means big.
Mhm.
Gross Umlowitz was a smaller town than Klein Umlowitz. Klein Umlowitz was a bigger town. But it says, I know, that's true.
Old names.
It's kind of like how where I live in Milton during the Civil
You
War.
live in Milton?
I live in Baghdad technically, but Milton is like our postcode.
Oh, okay.
Because during the Civil War they burnt down Baghdad twice.
Oh.
Because I do Civil War stuff as well. I've gotten into it.
Yeah.
And they took Baghdad was a bigger town. Then when they burned it down, Milton became the bigger town. And it's kind of like Baghdad was there before, so it's kind of just like weird because it's separated by a river.
Oh yeah, right.
Mhm.
My friends live in Milton.
It's a pretty place
It
to
is
live.
very nice. Yeah.
And so you were conscripted when you were 15. You said.
yeah,
Okay. And you were conscripted
in January, from January to, the date I don't know, from January to February, from January 44 till February 45 I was in the service.
So the tail end.
And so did
in
you?
Austria. That was further back in Austria than from Umlowitz. It was Czechoslovakia, but it was then German too. But I still actually was a refugee in Austria from Czechoslovakia, and it was Czech.
And so, while you were in primary school, were you part of like the Hitler Youth at all? Were you part of any Nazi organizations?
Hitler
I was
Youth.
A Hitler Youth.
You were into the Hitler Youth?
Yeah, when Hitler delivered us from the Czech, we, as Germans, they were all for Hitler. They were glad to get rid of the Czechs.
So Dad, you were 15 and you were in school, right?
Yeah,
You were going to school in a Czechoslovakian
that's
school.
where I started out, in kindergarten,
Yeah,
first and second grades
in Czech.
in Czech.
Yeah,
Well, it belonged to the Czech.
okay. And when you were 15, where were you going to school? In a Czech school?
No,
No.
You was in a
that
German
was
school.
under Hitler's then time.
Okay, so you were how old when Hitler took over?
Oh, that's a good question now.
So if it was 1940, the war ended 45. It started in
I
30,
think 38.
38.
What was the question now?
And he was 28. He was born in 28, and the war started in 38. So you were 10 years old when the war started.
Yeah, that's
1938.
about,
That's all right.
10 years old. So where were you living when you were 10 years old?
in the same place.
In Gross
Czechoslovakia.
In Gross Umlowitz?
Yeah.
Okay, so on your farm, you were living on the farm when you were 10.
No, not on the farm. My grandparents were on a farm. They were carpenters and a little farming.
Well,
together.
where were you living? On the railroad?
Yeah, it was separate from, you know, my parents, they got their own home.
And it was right by the railroad, right?
Well, the village was
By the
close
road.
to the village, railroad station.
Hmm.
Gross Umlowitz and even Klein Umlowitz.
On the
You know,
railroad
they
line.
were next to the railroad.
Okay.
And Kaplitz or Umlowitz was the second last station from Czechoslovakia. So in Kaplitz, from Umlowitz to Kaplitz, that was from one station to the next. And Kaplitz was the border from Czechoslovakia
Czechoslovakia to Austria.
and Austria, yeah.
So,
And,
Yes, it was on the border.
and
yeah.
we belonged
Grandma,
yet to the Austrian, you know.
Austrian. So you had a little house.
Yeah, they had a little house they bought, and they made payments for who knows how long. I would have to pay it for.
You
know.
told me that your mom had
Oh,
animals.
yeah. Well, that was
chickens.
when my mother was single yet. She came from a farmer's family, or not even a farmer's. It were all. My mother came from 10 children. She was the oldest one, and she had 5 brothers and 5 sisters. Yeah, anyway. And all those kids were in the carpenters. And besides carpentry, they were farmers. They had a little farm going with it, you know.
But you had a gun when Tante Mitzi and Tante
I had
Herman.
what?
You had a gun,
A gun?
okay, that you played with.
Oh, my first air rifle.
Yeah.
I had when Hitler took over, the economy went up, you know. My father got a better job on the railroad, and we could afford.
So you
Well-
were 10 years old when Hitler took over. So then the economy got better.
Yes. under
Okay.
Hitler.
So when you were 11, 12, 13 years old, you were going to school still.
Yeah, that was then in German school.
In German school. The high school was German. You started out in Czech school and then went to German school
Right.
in
Grade school
Austria.
and then
Hmm.
and high school.
And then,
And because of I was Czech, and then all of a sudden I had to go in German school. I flunked the test to go into high school.
Because you
And-
had did you have to learn Czech in the Czech school, and then you had
Yeah.
to relearn German?
Yeah, I didn't know any German then. You know, the high German.
now he speaks English. He doesn't speak
And
German
at
hardly
home
at all.
we talked quite a different dialect,
Mhm.
German.
Hmm.
So it was tough for me in German school. I was,
He didn't have
let's
friends.
say, the
you know,
dumbest
those-
one in the class. And
And it was hard to make friends because you didn't know anyone, right? Or your
Yeah.
neighbors.
well, then I went even with my friend that went to begin with. I was in the same class then with him,
Uh-huh. What was his name?
Frank
Frank.
Wolf.
Oh yeah, Frank Wolf.
Frank, probably.
But then when you were in what grade when you had to go to the youth, the Hitler youth?
Oh, in the service. I
Yeah,
had
they
to go.
want to hear about your service.
Yeah. Well, in fifth grade high school. And I wanted to become a forester. And that in the 5th grade I had my choice. I could go into college, the 5th grade, or keep the 5th, or make the 5th grade in high school. Instead, the college. So, and I chose the 5th grade in school. Well, and like I said, then one morning came the teacher and we had to go to the service.
So you were in school and a teacher came and said, all you boys pack up and go?
No, just the ones that are born in 28.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and I was the one.
So you went home and you said goodbye and off you
Well,
went?
it didn't happen that fast. So gradually, I really don't recall it that close how long it took before I went in the service. But anyway, I told my best friend he was 2 years older than me. I have to go in the service. And he was older. And he was a farmer though, and he didn't have to go into the service yet. Me younger, I had to go sooner than he did.
Did you have to go through any training?
Well, a little bit. I come to it. Well, and so the time came that I had to go from Umlowitz, from the station to Linz, Austria. That's where I was supposed to report, to the army or to the Hitler Youth, we were called.
So when you got done with your training in Linz, did you go back to your hometown, or were you sent anywhere else?
Like I said, my father took me on the train station. I noticed that's the first time I had seen my dad getting emotional. He had tears in his eyes to send me away in the service. And there we came into a barracks and we got equipped with uniforms. Well, over here they called us the baby soldiers. But we
babies.
did a job.
Yeah.
Well, you were only 15. That is a baby.
Adolescent man, but they took those mans off from the flak, from the guns. That was I served in the heavy guns, the smallest from the heavy guns. It was called the 88, and that was supposed to shoot at the airplanes, and the Americans came bombing. We shot at them. We had a small, in a camp, had a small training, but it took us then on the stations on a hill, and there was the guns set up. There was usually 6 guns in a circle, or 3 guns in a V shape, and there we had the training. The easiest jobs were the ones that lined the ball up and down and the one sideways. And there was one in the back who set the timing, how long the grenade flies until it explodes.
And what job did you have? What job did you have?
I could do the number 1, number 2, or 3. The ones it moved the gun sideways or up and down. That was pretty much the same job. All you had to do, was the observation post first. They picked up the target with the radar or optical through the binoculars, but it was a big binoculars. It was the one that followed the plane, sideways and all the ups and downs, and there was one in the middle. He had a good a 3D vision, what you call. that there was a marker when you looked in here, and there was another marker that came from the observation post. And what you had to do is to line those up, those marks, that they see, like, if you can tell how far that is away from here, and he could turn that and get that mark exactly on the same spot that he came from the observation, you know. And then that's what he had to follow, that moved, and you had to follow it, and that moved the gun. Mm-hmm. And when everything was done, and so also there were the ones that moved the gun up and down, they came too. We had a monitor, and there was a arm moving, and you by turning it, you had another mark, and you had to cover them up. And wherever that needle went, you had to follow it and keep it right on top of it.
That's cool.
Well, I think you
So
can
how do you
follow
load
me a
it?
little bit if you're interested.
Yeah. How did you load it?
Then there was I come to that too.
Okay.
And and on the observation post, that there was the commander and the leader, and you know
Do you know who he is?
Yeah, the commander of the gun battery.
the commander, from the whole battery.
And
Do you know who he was?
And
Do you know what his name was?
they came.
What was your commander's name?
Oh, Lieutenant Briggerman was his name.
And so he would sit at I'm guessing it had there was like a tube that he'd
Yeah.
look up through.
Now, like I said, you had to line that all up. Then there was a clerk, a bell on each gun, and on the observation post, he commanded the firing. He pressed a button, and then the bell started to ring on every gun, and he held it for 3 seconds, and when he let go the bell, the guns were supposed to pull off and shoot. And every 6 guns had the same bell, and when it stopped ringing, they had to pull off. And the reason was that they pull at the same time because the shrapnels went up there, and there's a lot more explosion shrapnels flying around up in the air when 6 guns, explode at the same time at there. You hit the target easier.
Did you wear hearing protection at all? Did you wear things?
Oh, we had helmets.
Just helmets.
Just
Not-
you didn't put anything in your ears?
Yeah, if the electric part went out, it was communicated through earphones, and there came the numbers through that you had to cover up. And it was with radar. That was more accurate. There came electric. But if the radar went out, they had an optical target. They had to figure it out.
Big tube that would I think
a monitor, and they translated everything through a machine to the accuracy. How long that grenade takes to fly until it reaches the height where the planes were flying, or how fast the plane goes, And they came through, and I would say everything would have to be a bullseye if everything went correctly. But yet, if at the smallest a mistake, you know, where you cover up those things. At 30,000 feet, there's quite a difference where the bullet explodes.
Did you have any
Yeah, and like I said, that when that bell rang, there was that thing set in things where it set the timing, how you know how long it can fly until it explodes, and that was stuck in a machine that adjusted that automatically, and the loading cannoneer gunner. It's gonna. He was ready. He was things holding that, and when we listened to the bell, and when it stopped ringing, he had to pull it out and shove it in the gun, and there was a lever, and waited till the bell stops, and he pulled it off. And that was our training every day, you know, to get that every gun shoots at the same time.
Do you know where were you deployed? Where was your gun battery at?
Oh yeah. Well, in Linz, Austria, we were stationed away from Linz, more on a hill, and there was not so much action, but near Linz town where the factories were, they had the most problem. They bombed the, you know, the factory where they manufactured war material. And they bombed it more, and then we had training to shoot that gun on tanks. But not too much training we had. We were mostly, you know, But anyway, a battery from near Linz, they went down south somewhere around a lake, training for tank shooting and things. And we had to replace that station near Linz. And I remember it was, we were a little stationed away from the guns, a little ways, in a house, in a guest house in there. One night I had to go in the bathroom, and it was pitch dark. It was, you know, between January and February, days were short, and the nights were pretty dark. And I could hear a hum from a plane flying around, you know. But I didn't think nothing of it because, you know, it wasn't maybe one of our planes flying. But I went back to bed in my bunk, and it was a little ways in it, the alarm started. So we had to jump up all out and run to the guns and uncover them, get them ready to shoot, you know, to have my clothing, and we dressed there while they were looking and finding the target, the plane, and find out if it's a friendly one or an enemy plane. But anyway, we got ready to shoot, and everything was ready to go. And when the bell sounded, a bomb came down, a whistling sound. It was whistled, and then a big explosion, and like an earthquake, it shook everything. And we just took cover automatically. We jumped, you know, was scared to hell.
That would be scary for 15 in the bombs.
It
Yeah.
was the first enemy, you know, the real action.
Did you see the plane? before it dropped the bomb, or
He heard it.
No,
was
it
just
was
heard
not dark, it was completely dead. But another thing, where I seen a plane coming down and then, I experienced what the bombs sounded like and things. But one time it was in a different place. It was real foggy at the daytime. Usually at the daytime there came one of them observations planes.
The Liberator?
Like I said,
The Liberators? Was it the Liberator?
Yeah,
The
no, not the
the
Liberator.
P-38?
The Lightning.
Oh, the Lightning.
The Liberator was a bomber, and the Mustang. They were observing. They took pictures, and then before the bombers come, they tried to reduce our actions. To bomb the flag. They found out where they are stationed, and then they bombed them first, and before the bombers came. Because the reason for that was the bombers, the squadrons, they were a lot easier target than a fighter plane, a single plane. Because the bombers, they flew one speed, one direction, and the same height. So it was easy to pick him up and accurately. And when everything was correct, done, like I said, it would have to be a bullseye every time. But the distance made a difference. It's a lot mistake, it was off. But the single planes, they could see the flash from the gun. And when they seen the flash, they took a sharp turn, went this way, and when we shot, the bullet was exploding here, and the plane was over here already. So that's how they avoided to get shot at.
did you have smaller guns around your battery, or was
No,
it just
no.
one?
Us younger guys, no, we didn't have no.
Were there other units around your battery?
Were they just the 88
No,
guns? Or?
no.
And this is an oddly specific question. Did you have red tabs on your uniform?
Oh, we had a little bit different uniform. We wore the young guys wore the Hitler Youth Army like.
The pullover.
Yeah, we had the first uniform and the second, and then a working uniform too. Three
Okay.
things.
Do you remember what color they were?
Color?
Color?
Gray.
Gray? Okay.
Blue-gray.
Mm.
Yeah, the soldiers, they had a nicer uniform. The real soldiers,
Those like that and button up. Yeah.
Yeah, they were nice.
Do you have a picture
Dress
of
uniform. I didn't like
Nietzsche?
our uniform, the Hitler Youth uniform.
Was it cold? Did you guys wear coats or just the straight uniforms?
Oh, it was cold in the winter time. In the barracks, they were flimsy barracks, and we had water buckets overnight. The water froze in the buckets, and at the daytime we kept the fire going in a stove. It was warm. Not overnight and things. And
Asked him if he's seen any dead people.
it was, we were poor equipped actually.
Mm-hmm.
When they got the uniforms there in a warehouse, like they had a big pile of shoes, and they told us, go ahead and pick yourself a pair of shoes out from that pile. And they were all mixed up, the left and the right. I don't know where they all got those shoes and equipment. And you found one part, and then you looked at for another one that fairly matched the other one.
That's funny. And was it the same for your uniform? The big pile of uniforms, or just someone would hand it off to you?
we got, uh, you know, I don't really can remember it anymore how we got to the uniform.
So, when it got closer to the end of the war, were you ever deployed outside of your gun battery?
Did they ever,
So, were you ever sent out outside of your gun battery as the war got closer to the end?
when it went to the end? Oh, to the end, you know, we were replaced by girls. The young guys were even things. And we had a physical from the doctor, and my doctor, he set me back for another physical till July. In July, I would have had to have another physical. And the first physical, the doctor said, I am too weak to go into the big army.
And was this in 1944 or 1945?
That was 45. I got to think about that now. January 44 till February 45. It could have been in 45. Because in 45 the war ended in May. So from January to May, it could have been that time. And so, and they told us when the girls took over our place, when we go home, we're supposed to report us to the recruiting station as soon as we get home. And so I went home with some of my friends, you know, they were stronger guys, and they, you know, they tested the physical. They had to go home and report themselves, and they got sent in the front against in the East Front, fighting the Russians, and some in West, you know, in the front lines. And the war went pretty bad already. So when I went home, I kept quiet. I didn't report myself. He would have caught me, you know. I had a hard time.
Yeah. Do you remember what was the food like? If you don't mind, what was the food like?
The what?
Food.
Oh, the food. Well, at first there was plenty of it. They shoved us whole 5-gallon buckets in the stove of any kind of marmalades, you know, and things. It was plenty in the kitchen. But at the end it was pretty scarce. We got a slice of bread and maybe a sausage about this thick that had to last the whole day. And we went pretty hungry.
Yeah. One of my good friends made the wartime recipe for the bread, and it called for sawdust.
Yeah, that's. It could have been it, but it tasted like a sausage, you know. If there just would have been enough of it, it would have been okay. But not even that was very much.
Yeah.
Did they see any
And
planes?
we had Russian prisoners in our camp. And they were pretty nice, those prisoners. And they liked the Germans, they liked us. They even could use them for ammunition carriers or things, you know. And they were actually helping us.
Were the Russian prisoners wearing uniforms, or were they wearing civilian?
No, they were civilian.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you see any of the planes go down?
Yeah, that one time.
Yeah.
I can tell you about
Yeah.
that. It was in Leonding, near Linz, too. And there was alarm, and we were firing, shooting. but it was so full fog. It was foggy in the morning. You know, you couldn't see, and we just had to shoot with the radar and things. And we could hear bombing and things, and we were shooting and things, and all of a sudden that sound came again, like a bomb would come to us. It started whistling. It got louder and louder, and then boom, you know, thing. But we couldn't see anything. Things we just heard it. But at noontime time, when the fog went away, there was a hill next to us, and there was a plane laying on the field. It was them liberators, and it was on fire. It was smoking it, and we seen the first dead ones. Oh, that was a cruel time. One in the plane, there was a arm sticking out, just the bone, and the flesh was all burned up and stank with oil and gas. And I seen two guys laying on the field in the whole body, you know, in the uniform, but he had blood coming out of his nose, another on the side. But we didn't know who shot him down, you know.
Was that the only plane crash you saw during the war? Was that the only plane crash you saw during the war?
Was it the only one? Did you see any more?
Oh, did I see any more? No, that was about the only one. That was enough. But at first it was just fun, you know. We're playing soldiers, you know, when you were young. Anyway, and we were kind of proud that we are really, you know, recruited as a big soldier. Only we had to replace it, you know. Yeah, they could spare men, you know, they were short on troops in Russia and things with all that war going on. And we had to replace those guys, and they had to go in the front. They were not really pleased, I guess, that we had to take it over for them.
Yeah. And then the girls replaced you.
And then they placed even us, just like we replaced the one before. The girl replaced us, and we were supposed to go. But we were lucky that the war went to the end there. So we didn't have to go in the front anymore. Only partially, the way I say, because I didn't report myself and things. I got away okay.
Yeah. So when you went back to your hometown, did you live with your parents? When you went back to your hometown, did you live with your parents or did you live somewhere else?
Oh, I got to think about this now. Where was I?
I'd make sure it was recording.
Oh yeah, I went back to Czechoslovakia yet, where I was born. Yeah, that's where I was born. But then, when the Russians came in, my parents were afraid to get, you know, from the Russians. My dad was in the party, in the Nazi, and he was in the SA, and so he was afraid of the Russian. And there was a Czech in the village. He was kind of strict, you know. We had to give away the bicycles. If you had a gun, it was dangerous, let's say. That we get caught up and sent back to Russia in some camps like the Germans did with the Russian prisoners, you know. They replaced the Russian, like my neighbor farmer, there was 3 sons, and they were all, actually 2 of them I remember. Carl and Frank, they went into the service in the Russian front, and a Russian prisoner or a civilian or something, they came to replace those two guys on the farm. He was supposed to work on the farm. I remember this guy, you know, he was a friendly, he didn't bother anybody, and which kids we played with him. And I remember he got some tobacco sent from his parents from Russia. And the Mahorka, they called it, he rolled those cigarettes. And we kids that all tried to start smoking too with him. But,
That was the Russian prisoner that worked on the farm?
yeah, they could have been a prisoner or any kind of Russian.
Do you remember his name?
No, I don't remember his name anymore. No, that's just very sad.
Do you remember how old he was? Or was
Yeah, I could guess. He must have been in the 30s.
That's cool.
When the Russians were working at your flak battery at your camp, did they have their own barracks? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, they were separate. And they were kind of communicating with us. At night, they came up to our windows and they knocked on our windows. Do you have something to eat? And we had a 5-gallon bucket, and whatever we didn't eat, we put in that 5-gallon bucket and gave it to them. And they were kind of friendly. They would whittle a stick or something for you, and made even a ring of a metal coin things. And they were communicating. And they even liked us, the Germans. They were, you know, like the Ukrainians now. They liberated with the Germans. They,
Yeah.
you know.
The UNA, yeah. So what we focus on for our reconstructions and reenactments are those guys. So all the Russians, the Ukrainians, and all the Eastern peoples that were
The
indigenous.
Ukrainians, they were actually Russians, but they didn't, just like we, you know, were in Sudetenland, they didn't care much for Russia.
Did you play any music?
Oh, when the Russians came in one day, we were at home, a car pulled up right by our house up there, and some officers came into the house by us, you know, and kind of took, what do you call it, a place to stay, you know, some must have been some officers, you know, maybe even the general, I wouldn't know. But I knew it was 4 or 5 guys, and they just took over, you know, in the house. I call it headquarters. They took headquarters in our house. And at that time I had that accordion, and some Russian guy took my accordion and he played there some kind of Russian music.
Is it still the one that you still have?
Not that one.
Okay, the
I
one
had
you
another
traded.
one,
Okay.
a smaller one, I'll tell you, that I traded then for this. And we were kind of scared, you know. But they were friendly. They didn't know if we were Nazis or anything. They were just soldiers, you know, kind of friendly. But they didn't even stay overnight, I think. No, they pulled off again and moved somewhere else.
The officers were Russian?
Yeah, they were Russians.
Huh.
Yeah, so our village was taken over by the Russians first. But then they straightened out the borderline. There was the railroad station. We were on this side of the railroad, and on the other side were the Russians, but then the Americans took over this side, and the Russians had to pull back on the other side of the railroad. So that the railroad made the border then between. So then the Americans came up, in our village, and there was some raids going on. Sometimes the Russians pulled over and ransacked, and raped some women, and the women's always, there was always alarm, the Russians come. And the girls and the women, they hide themselves. And
What was the name of that village? What was that?
That was Umlowitz, Groß Umlowitz and Klein Umlowitz.
And so the Russians at your flak battery, at your where you were deployed, do you know what happened to them?
To those helpers that we had, I really don't know what happened to them. Did they go back again?
Were they there when you left, when you got replaced by the girls?
I don't remember. I didn't see him anymore when I got back from the service. That was before I went to the service that I seen that guy. And one of my
He didn't understand.
Things, like I said, there was two guys went into the service, and one came on a leaf, and he treated that guy pretty bad. He was ugly to him.
The Russians that were knocking on the windows in your battery, did you see them? The ones you talked.
So, the Russians that knocked on the window of where you were at the flak battery.
Oh, that was in the service.
Yeah.
During the service.
They
had an extra part where they were living, They just could go
How long
free,
were they there?
And they were hungry and I don't know even how they fed them, the Germans.
Do you recall if they wore like arm patches on their shoulder at all, or they just wore plain clothes?
No, they were plain clothes.
Okay. I was trying to think in the back of my head, like I'm trying to think what units they were with, because that's what we do for German reenactors, the Russians.
I got a picture.
He has them at this house.
There's a Russian said, "I feel like being a German already." He was trying to talk with us in German, He had a little garden there or something thing, and he said, I'm feeling like a German already. So they collaborated with us, some of them, but not all of them either,
Mm-hmm.
Some fanatics there were, and that's why I don't like to hear about real fanatics. We're all the same anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What were you gonna say, Brian?
Were the Russians older or younger people usually?
No, they were middle-aged.
Middle age.
They're kind of older.
So since your town in Austria was on the border, you saw both Soviet Russians and Americans as well at the end of the war?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
How did the Americans treat the people?
Oh,
in your
they
town?
were friendly. They were. Oh gosh. I had two sisters, and they took headquarters, the Americans, in Klein Umlowitz, which I say there was the bigger village than Rosenberg. And they had a switchboard, telephone communication. And my younger sister, who had English lessons in high school, she knew a little bit English, and they hired her, my sister, and she worked on the switchboard on a telephone. She knew that much English, to operate that communication. And then there was that soldier. He took my sister. They kind of started dating.
Oh, this is
He
good.
he always brought my sister back home to Großumlowitz, where we were living,
An
and
American
he
soldier.
picked her up to go to work over in here. And so he stayed with us. You know, my mother washed his laundry and ironed his uniform, and
He
he
knows
sometimes
who
he ate with us, and got really friendly. His his name was, and and I was there too. We got kind of friends together. Um,
He's still here. He's here.
I got a,
Didn't he promise to come back and get your
oh,
sister?
Yeah.
When he went back to America, he promised to come back, and he
Yeah.
didn't. So he looked him up. He knows who he is here.
Yeah, he found him in Washington.
Where does he
I
live at
told
now?
her-
Yeah.
the way I had. I will come back for you, even if you have to come in a wheelchair.
Rudy,
But
where did
then-
you find him?
When he left, then they communicated a little bit, but it cooled off and nothing happened of it.
Yeah. So when you moved to America, you said you met him. You found him somehow.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
another point I would like to let you know. Well, then I was a refugee in Austria, and when I retired at home, I came to sit there, and was thinking about William Lang was his name. I wonder where the guy is now, and I knew just that he was from Chesterfield, South Carolina. So, doggone it, I thought I'm gonna try and if I can get in contact with him. So I called the post office in Carolina and I asked them if they know a guy with the name of William Lang, and they said yes, we know. They call him the Big Bill. William. So somehow I got his phone number and we got in contact. And then he told me that he is a long distance driver and he sometimes he comes through Milwaukee. So I wonder if we could meet each other. And then nothing much happened, but then we got to visit him. We took a ride down with my wife and visited him.
How did you meet your wife? If you don't mind me asking.
Oh, well, that was in Austria when we were refugees. My wife came from Yugoslavia, was a refugee in Austria, and I came from Czechoslovakia to Austria and was a refugee. Which is funny, isn't it? That because it used to was Austrian, but yet I had to be a refugee and had to apply for citizenship in my country, actually, where my parents, but anyway, I was a refugee, and there I met my wife. They lived in a camp a little ways away, and I joined a music band in a different town. And in a kind of youth band, I started out with playing the flute and the trumpet, but our teacher died, and then there was the big band thing, and the more advanced ones from the youth band, they joined the big band, and I joined it too. I was not very good at shit. And but there was some guys there that were better from from that where my wife was, and we started kind of what you call a garage band. Besides them, we got together, and there was a guy. He wanted me to play the accordion, even that it was not that great yet, but I knew a little trumpet then. And there was a guy there, and we had some notes, and we were kind of getting it going, but nothing really happened big. But our kids, my son and some other kids, they were in a band. They got good, but then they got separated too.
What happened to your parents after the war ended?
After well, my father, when it got really dangerous for us Germans, he took us over the border. He grew up in that area. He knew that place where the border is from Austria. And that one night he took two girls from Klein Umlowitz and me. He took at night over the border over Austria. So midnight when it was dark, and he took us over, and there was a creek going, and he told us if we are over that creek, we are in Austria, we are safe. And we should keep on going. There's a farmhouse, and they will take us up. So and I remember we got to that, and we jumped over that river because we got wet feet. And the farmer then took us up. I had to sleep in a haystack or a straw. I don't know where the girls were. And we was there during the day. He was a helper on the farm. He had to watch his cows out on the pasture a little bit. And my mother knew where that farmer is. She was in contact. But then from there on, in the town of Linz, that was near Linz, we had some kind of, he was not a relationship, but they knew somehow my father, he was a supervisor on a construction job, and they were not related, but known where my father was born. And he was a mayor, and the papers it said his name, the same name, Gaffal, and that must have been the mayor from where my father was born. And they kind of, my father was what do you call, a son out of marriage. He had a stepfather,
Mm-hmm.
he was brought up, and what I know. And that mayor must have had a brother that was in Linz. That was that supervisor. And they arranged that I live with him, And but my mother had to smuggle me where I wasn't by that farmer that was in the Russian zone. And the couple was in the American zone. So actually we wanted to come to the American zone too. And my mother wanted me to get, and the Danube went through Linz, And on this side were the Russians again, the Danube, and this side the thing. So my mother smuggled me over the Danube to this relative, our friends, that they took me on then. And so she bribed some kind of truck driver, that went over the border, on the bridge, there. The Russians checked the trucks and things and everything, and the Americans on that side. And I don't know how much she bribed that truck driver to smuggle me over. So
Where were you
we had
hiding?
a load of boxes,
Oh.
and the box, and I was away in the front, and all boxes. And,
So you're hiding in between the boxes?
yeah, I was hiding in the truck. And when we came to the station where the Russians checked us, they just lifted up the canvas a little. Well, go ahead, you know. So I got over.
That's cool. And so when you went to the American sector of Lynn's,
And I was there, and I was with that guy, with that relative, that supervisor, you know, and he took me, you know, might as well learn some profession, you know. So I went as apprentice, a mason apprentice, you know. He took me on, and I worked on those construction things as a apprentice. And we went to work every morning. He went around,
so
and everybody there in the construction, they considered me like I am his son. That relatives, you know. But I really never cared much for masonry. But you know, while I was there, instead of going to work just as a helper, I might as well learn a trade.
When did your dad die with his train?
Oh, that's another.
Yeah.
That's when I was on construction. I was about 17, going on 18. So, we were in that. Oh, then my parents came too, you know, and they were kept then in barracks, like in a camp again. And they moved in, and my father got a job again on the railroad, and my mother too, and they lived there. So I moved then from this guy to my parents in that camp. And that's where that neighbor camp was, where my wife was, in that camp. And so I had nothing to do anymore with things, and I didn't care much for masonry. I wanted to get a job on the railroad. But I was no citizen in Austria. I had to apply for the citizenship to get a job on the railroad. And my father, he worked on the railroad, just things. And ordinary jobs he did. And one February, I remember it was not very much snowing. My dad had to go and clean up the switches from the snow. It was just that one time it was kind of bad with snow and so I was on the job. I remember when my mother came to me and told me the report that my dad had an accident on the railroad. And she took me, and we went to the station and talked to and looked at the place where he got killed. And it happened so, and the investigation they took, there came a train from Vienna, or a special train, one of them, Schnellzug. Fast train, you know, that didn't stop very much, and straight. But the engineer, when he pulled into the station, he said he thinks he hit something out there, you know, coming in. So they checked and they found my dad on the tracks, all mangled up. And they figured he had boots on, and the sole was ripped open and was just hanging on one a little bit on the part. So they think he got
It would be in your
caught when he pulled the switch, you know, and that rail that came closer that caught, he got caught in there and couldn't get out. This thing, well, the train came and
Okay,
ran
I
him
can
over.
find them online.
That was one of my saddest days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you came here, you had to pay to come here, right?
Oh, how
His
did
paper shows.
yeah. When it's a little private, but I should tell it anyway. When we had that garage band, yeah, we had one guy from that village. He played the clarinet, and he was kind of the leader of us, you know. And I went down to there and we in a room in those barracks, and empty. Was it a school room or something? That's where we practiced. And at that one time practice, and the girls, they looked kind of through the window, and that one girl, she kind of gave me the eye. I noticed, you know, she's looking at me and things. Oh, but I didn't think nothing of it at the time. But I was writing notes for each instrument. I copied some notes to play on their instrument. You know, each instrument and different notes.
He has his notes here.
So when I had a bunch ready for each guy, I took him over by my band leader, and there was that girl that looked through the window. It was his daughter, that band leader's daughter, you know. So his dad must have been somewhere else, but we had a little conversation, and I dated her. I invited her to go in a movie and something. And we started dating with her. And then I was glad I had a nice job on the railroad then. I was a brakeman, and that I could tell you another story. But anyway, about my wife coming to America, they had papers going to come to the States. And I didn't have in mind to go to America, you know. But there it came to a point before they go to think you know, we should break up and the daughter should come with them. But she didn't want to go she wanted to stay with me in plain words. So she stayed there, and we got married before they went to the States. So they knew, you know, she's in good hands with me, I suppose. I had to get a job. But the trouble was my mother and her, they didn't get along very well. So she got a little homesick or something, you know, and we stayed in contact with her, and they told us it's much better living over here and things, because we couldn't afford much in Austria. After the war, it was pretty bad, economy. That little bit of money I earned at the railroad at the time, you know, when the month was over, the money was all gone, and where could we have afforded to rent a place? Or it was just impossible, you know. So when I was teeter-tottering, should I go or not? But eventually, I agreed, you know. My mother didn't want to hear nothing much. So that was one reason they didn't get along very well, because she wanted me to come to America, and my mother didn't want to let me go, you know. Yeah. I was sort of in the middle, you know. But anyway, it come to the point that in the back of my head, sometimes I thought, it's nothing, maybe nothing happens. So, but anyway, But my wife took the steps, and things so all of a sudden I had to make up my mind to go or stay, and I didn't want to let her go either, so we got married.
And what year did you move to the United States?
1955.
1955.
So, and I was 5 years on construction and 5 years on the railroad. And then I came over here
You can see.
and visited my,
I can kind of see it. Yeah.
well, and anyway,
They had
That's
to
it.
I had to
pay.
quit on the
This is
railroad.
immigration voucher.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Got that. And yeah, Rudy, we have your papers.
Your
Your
There was something else would have been,
Yeah, you had
Um,
two.
well,
It's
you
pretty.
might
It's
would
pretty
have.
interesting.
Yeah.
This
Well,
one.
you just about heard my life story.
What did you
We have
do
to
when you
blow
came
that
to the
up,
United
I don't-
States for
Yeah.
work?
Shows
Where
What
did
kind
you
of
work?
work did you do
Shows
when you came here?
1956.
Oh,
He came through some
kind of-
type of Catholic charities,
That's cool.
oh,
and it was
first my
$300.
my father-in-law
Yeah, I
just
was
take
gonna
it
say,
easy now.
I was going
for a
to
little
do the
while,
conversion
and
factor
I
from
will get you a
56 to now
job.
to what 300 would be
And
worth.
then
You know,
he had some
again, with the
friends.
inflationary.
They worked at the Ford
Um,
Corporation. It was called.
I thought he would have come through Ellis Island.
But
But
it
guess
had already
what?
closed.
No, no.
I don't know if
Ellis
you ever
Island
hear about the
closed
Ford
in what,
Corporation.
1950?
You did?
I didn't
The
know. I
Ford
was thinking he said it
Corporation.
came through.
It was a
Yeah, but
manufacturing
it
company.
closed. County Ellis Island closed
Yeah.
in
He had some
52?
friends there. My
52.
father-in-law,
Oh, no, look.
and they
I
helped
do
me to
have-
get a job.
You got better
Yeah.
ones than I do?
So there was
I have all
a
of these.
foundry.
Oh, there, those are better. Yeah.
We got a first job in the foundry for 2
Okay.
years. I worked
It'll
in
probably end up
as a
being
core
sucking into
maker.
loads.
And
This is his German
I
stuff.
got laid off for 2 months. Then they rehired me on
That's
the
his.
maintenance
That's really
department.
cool.
I'll just forward you the
Yeah,
email
load
if you just
trucks.
give it to me, and then maybe you can.
Their supply things and to garden work.
An anvil that he made still sits out in front of his garage.
That's cool. Where'd you live at in America? Where'd you live in America?
Oh, I never regretted it that we came, but my wife got homesick. My wife didn't like it.
Yeah, Rudy, when you came
They
to
live in
America,
Brookfield.
what states where did you start? Where did you land at when you came to America?
I came straight to Milwaukee
Yeah.
because my in-laws were here,
Mm.
and we came by them. And my father-in-law had a house, and
This is
he
his
took us on in
baptism.
the attic.
I have his
We had a
baptism.
room.
That's cool.
That's where we stayed until I got a job. I had a little money, then we rented a place, about 2 houses from his. We kind of lived together.
Was that close to the Harley Davidson factory?
Yeah,
Where Linda?
yeah.
Yeah.
It was not far, Harley
We went
Davidson.
there.
Yeah, Linda grew up. She showed us. Well, I was with Scott. Linda was with Kathy, and they took to his house. And it's literally like 2 blocks, 3 blocks from the original Harley Davidson factory in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
That's cool.
That's-
And then he worked at the foundry. I went to his foundry too.
His
Scott
daughter,
took me
she
by
was
where you
gonna
worked.
scan them in,
The
but I
foundry?
just tried to take. So she needs to
Yeah, we went by
scan
the-
them.
Remember
Yeah.
that my
Because we
foreman
have-
was
I
a
have-
Polish guy.
Yeah.
Do any photos
I've
from
heard
his
there's lots of
service?
Polish
or-
workers.
But she's
Stanley
supposed to
Warner,
find
he
them when
was
she's
named.
back.
And what, he
Because I
still lives up
knew
in
a little
Milwaukee?
Czech, we kind of,
Yeah,
He
she'll be
kinda
back
got
in
to like
February.
me.
I don't know if he's coming. He might come back in February.
sometimes he
I'll
had
talk to
to
you guys after
translate
this about something
for
I'm doing in
another
February
guy.
that's local to like
a little bit. It
down
was a
where we
little
live.
Everybody
advanced.
knows.
I was
about
not very
Don't
good
tell you.
either, but better than others.
Yeah.
Well, so you know now what kind of soldier I was.
Are you gonna play?
Do you still play the accordion?
I still, but I still don't feel like playing it.
You
He's
can
got-
show him your notes. You can show him your notes.
Yes, I could.
If you don't want to play, he wrote
had
all
a
of
long
these.
day
I
yesterday.
understand that.
I want to be able to do what he's doing at 94.
He was riding
You
a
said
motorcycle.
I was like,
No,
Yeah, where's
yes,
it?
it's the little pig.
The little pig.
Well, we call it the little pig.
It's a little.
Maybe I
They may have put it up. But
Oh, he's gonna play. He's like, maybe I'll play this. But, he hand wrote all of his music. That's what he's calling notes. So the notes he's talking is all of his music. He's got it this big, and it looks like it was actually mimeograph. You know, no, he actually wrote
professional.
them.
Yeah. Wow. I'll take
Yeah.
the camera and bring him over there. We had a funeral because one of the guys had killed me to make me that. So then I got he actually died on that.
well, what, the big one was the bagpipes too, wasn't it? The bagpipes.
We have a guy that plays the accordion. We have a guy that plays the balalaika, so it's like a Russian guitar.
Yeah.
I'll have to send you videos and stuff. I think
Cool.
they're on my Facebook of the Kanye dance party.
Geez.
That's really interesting.
A lot harder life than people today has ever lived.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got it. There it is. There's his accordion case. Well, look, you're all ready to go to dinner.
I'm ready. Yeah. Good stuff, you guys.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having us over. It's a nice place too.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress.
Early stages, but yeah, it'll look really cool.
So my parents, that's kind of how our house was set up in Milton. It's a barndominium, and we lived in it. We moved here we moved to Milton when I was a sophomore in high school, so that was 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
And we're still not done with it, mainly because my parents are like 60, 65, 56.
Hey, easy with that. I'm 62. Come on.
62.
How'd you like your cookies?
See, that's what they think.
Yeah,
but you
I
think that, but
copied
I'm
all
not.
those songs.
See, they are. They're like 10 years younger, man.
I know.
I get around like
That's awesome.
Like a fighting
That's
machine.
his.
Yeah.
He did that.
Yeah.
That's his
Yeah, I got some other music, I think some polkas.
So
Can you
I
believe
think the
he
video you
handwrote
saw is when he was playing the Marine Corps hymn.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he was playing the Marine Corps hymn.
Some Christmas carols.